So at this point, I'm very, very happy and thankful to be able to welcome today's industry guests. We have with us Dr. Raymond Shillito. He's a senior expert with BASF. Dr. Sean Finnie, who's a senior R&D manager with Bay State Milling, and Arnaud Dubat, who's the director of business development for KPM Analytics. And Arnaud, I appreciate your coming on board late at night. He is sitting in Paris, I believe, at this point in time. So thank you so much. And with that, we'll get started. And Dr. Shillito, could you kick us off and give us a little background about yourself?
Well, I knew you were going to do that.
You're first.
So I am maybe, I don't know, a little different here. So my focus in my life has been biotechnology. And for those who are in the agriculture field, I started off looking at tissue culture. I was involved in some of the early biotechnology research in Europe back in a long time ago. And actually, a lot of my time has been in industry. I did one postdoc in Leiden in the Netherlands, and then I originally come from England, by the way. And then I went to Basel, Switzerland, and basically have been industry funded ever since. So I haven't really got an experience of the academic world. I was at Friedrich Mission Institute in Basel, 5.5 years. We did a lot of work on the original transformation of plants, putting genes into plants without agrobacterium, which made us a little unusual. And then I found I wanted to do something a little bit difficult, so I came over to the US to put genes into maize, which at that time and even now is still a little bit difficult, to say the least. So I stayed at that for about 11 years. I ran a research group. We called ourselves the crazy people in the corner of the building. The idea was to find innovative ways to put genes into maize and other crops. So that was my sort of research phase. I then got let go by then Novartis, as it was. I joined another company and to run the regulatory science group. So I know quite a lot about trying to get these products to market. And that was interesting. It was a big change going to research to what we call development. So this is a little bit, I guess, maybe some people that are working with industry may get a little bit of a flavor of what is that like going from a more freewheeling situation to a really focused area. I did that for a while, and then I got involved more with third-party laboratories and people, and gradually moved out of that role into a more external facing role. And actually I worked with many scientific societies, Society in Vitro Biology, seed folks, various other things. And I'm actually now at the present, I'm a board member with the Cereals and Grains Association for those that are interested in cereals and grains. I would say that my goal is always to do work in something I'm interested in. And so I always say I've changed my job about every 5 years, found something new, moved into it, and then found something more interesting than that. And so that's the way I've gone. I would say I've been privileged to be in at the birth of biotech and still here while it's growing on, I don't know, 180, 200 million acres, 300 million acres around the world. So for me, that's my area. As far as interactions with the universities, a lot of that has been for me through associations and working with people at associations such like I had some interaction with our research group here in RTP. They have worked a lot in trying to get that early phase of research in biotech. My other area is communication. I've done hundreds of workshops, and I'm a member of the Toastmasters for those people who know what Toastmasters is, which is really useful for communication. So those are sort of background. I'm on the cusp of retiring on Friday from BASF, but will remain active in the field. So that's a basic background. I'm really interested in analytical methods as well, so that's where I'm going to stay involved. I also work with international standards and various other things as well. I hope that's useful.
Very good. Thank you so much. Dr. Finnie, would you give us a little background on yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to be part of this workshop. I think it'll be hopefully something that we'll all learn some useful information. A little bit about myself. I do have a bachelor's and master's in food science. Got that from the University of Idaho. And then from there, I got convinced to move to Manhattan and get a PhD in grain science. John Fabian was my major professor. After that, I did a postdoc in Europe, working in Belgium at KU Leuven. And then after that, I started my industrial career working for Cargill in Minneapolis. I was there for 5 years, working in their global R&D group, focusing on developing new ingredients for the baking industry. After a while, I got to where I wanted to get kind of back into cereal grain science, and I had an opportunity to join Bay State Milling about 8 years ago. And in this role, I lead all of our cultivar development and breeding initiatives. So similar to Ray, Ray was part of developing some biotechnology traits, and in my role, I'm collaborating with technology developers, whether they're GM or non-GM, and really producing ingredients from that technology. And it's really my experience with Bay State Milling over the last 8 years that I think would be most applicable to this workshop. And I say this because Bay State Milling is a fairly small flour milling company. We don't need or want to build the competencies of plant breeding and genetics, but we want to utilize the output of that work. So most of my work is partnering with universities and private companies to really commercialize this technology. So I'm interacting quite frequently with technology developers, both at campuses and away from campuses. So yeah, that's probably a little bit about myself.
Great, thank you so much. Arnaud.
Yes, hello everyone again. Thank you for inviting me. So as you can hear from my accent, I'm not in the US right now. I'm from France, and I am working for KPM, which maybe you better know the name Chopin Technologies. So we are now part of KPM Analytics. And I have been working in the company for the last 30 years or 36 maybe. And I have been occupying different roles, starting by after sales, applications, and now it's more about development. My background is about biochemistry. I'm also a miller. And then I had a food science engineer degree. And then I completed with marketing. So I had no real university education. I'm no PhD, and of course I have been contacting these strange people for almost all my career. And basically what I am doing, and most of the communication, because we are speaking about communications, we are communicating a lot with millers, bakers on a worldwide basis, which make us acting a little bit like a link between the process people and fundamental research. So we are not either from the fundamental research, we are not making the product, but we try to understand and to link the two things together. So that's a little bit bridging science and industry. And what I see from our perspective, we have a little bit two extremes. We have sometimes people in the plants and without any offense that are not extremely knowledgeable about what is happening in terms of rheology, enzymes, and et cetera. And on the other side, we have people which are absolutely extreme, speaking about genes and things like that. And it's sometimes for us complicated to bind the two things together and to bring knowledge. So that's the reason why we try to get a lot in contact with the universities. Maybe another specificity also by being a French actor, it's not like in the US. I'm very impressed by the fact that in the universities in the US, you can have access as an industry, you can have access to the university and works together. In my country, it's a bit different. It's like there is a wall between the two things, and except if you are doing which are extremely advanced in terms of technology, it's really hard to get contact with a university because sometimes it looks like too simple. So that's sometime, and we hope that now being more involved and more present in the US, we will have more opportunities to work in let's say in cooperation with university. We've done that in the past, and we are still doing that. I've seen that Professor Kali is with us, and he knows we have been working and still trying to work with him and around milling processes, and we have been working also on different occasions, but it's always very punctual, and it's sometimes, as I said, a bit complicated. We had some successes. We have some devices that have been developed or improved thanks to partnership with universities and bringing knowledge. But I'm very interested to see and to learn how we can do better on that.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you so
that's what I
much.
have.
Very good. Thank you so much. We will go ahead now and break out into the 3 sessions. We have you randomly chosen as to which group you'll be in. Each of the industry participants will be in one of those groups as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing some really interesting, good discussion back and forth. Hopefully both sides will learn some things as as you walk away from this workshop. So all right, well, welcome back, everyone. I think I was able to sit in on 3 separate sessions, and it sounded like there was really some great discussion in each. We are a little ahead of schedule, which is just fine. There's no problem with that at all. What I might ask at this point is, could each of the facilitators I see. I was just reading what you wrote there, Ray. That was
sorry, it came out in the meeting, so I'll put it in this one so everybody's got it.
That's perfect. What I may do is ask each of the facilitators, if you took notes, just to cover briefly what you heard in your session, and then we'll just open this up for discussion and Q&A with the entire group. So let's see, who do we have? Erica, were you on with question 1? Why don't you go ahead and
sure. Yeah. So I had facilitated discussions on question 1, how do you meet with and build connections with industry? And there was a lot of overlap between the different breakouts. We heard about people using LinkedIn, sending messages. We heard about the importance of having face-to-face conversations, utilizing networks that have already been established. Maybe if you've had previous industry experience, continuing to use those relationships, picking up the phone and doing cold calls and cold emails. It takes a lot of persistence. It's not just about having one industry connection. You need to continually be reaching out, going to conferences. We also discuss the importance of making sure your initial introduction is concise and that you're succinct and that you have a strong story, and that you're preparing for those initial meetings. When establishing that connection, be thinking about the long term, planning to have, numerous connections throughout the year. And it's really about building trust and making sure that your industry colleagues have confidence in your work and that you are continuing to provide high quality work. Yeah, I think that is a lot of what we talked about, and I would just open it up if Dr. Finnie or Dr. Shillito, Arnaud, if there's anything that you wanted to add there that I missed. Building trust,
I
and
think,
just being persistent, yeah.
yeah, I think trust is a key word in building those relationships and getting to know. I was kind of hearing that from Arnaud, I think, when he was talking just in the last session on understanding where people come out. Colleen, I believe you had number 2 question. Could you give us a short overview of those?
Sure. So we addressed, how do you listen to and learn from potential industry partners about their needs? I heard a lot of great ideas and great insights I wouldn't have appreciated or learned otherwise. But 2 or 3 big takeaways that I would, the thread I would pull through all of our conversations is, number 1, it's not enough to keep up with the journals. You also have to keep up with what the competition is doing, with what industry is doing and what their needs. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to get out and talk to people, especially at conferences, but in other kind of venues as well. Number 2, at those conferences and at every opportunity that you have to be talking with industry, don't take too long at it, especially the conference route. You know, a 5 or 10 minute conversation, and you're probably going to have a pretty good idea of whether or not there's a match between your research and your industry partners' needs. So there's no shame in moving on to the next table or moving on to the next booth and starting up another conversation. As one of my mentors once said, it really is more about the quantity of people you touch rather than the in-depthness of every single conversation. Number 3, this is sort of specific to the group with Dr. Finnie, but I really appreciated his point about centers of excellence at other universities and how that has often been a rich source for him to make connections with industry folks that are going to already, by means of what they're studying, have a connection with his needs. And I think those are the big 3 that I would list right there. Oh, one more, and this would seem rather obvious, but we often forget, all because we're human and we see everything from our own perspective. The whole point so often when we go in as faculty members is we want to explain to the industry person how our invention or our idea works, when in fact what they need most is for us to explain how it will meet their needs. So simply reframing that initial conversation is so important to making that quick connection. That's enough.
Perfect. That's great. Okay. Katie and RJ.
So a lot of what was already said by Erica and Colleen kind of wove into our question as well, which is how do you convey the value that you add to potential industry partners? So some things that haven't come up yet, I don't think, is working at the speed of industry and knowing that industry is wanting an immediate solution and is on a different timeline. So adding value to a company can be about timing and having the right conversation with the right person, but also at a time when they could potentially fund that work or be involved, or it's a really hot topic in the industry. And also along that, being realistic with timelines. So a common thing that we hear from our university industry demonstration partnership group is to under-promise and over-deliver. And doing the opposite will always kill the deal for any future collaborations. So that being really important. Another thing that came up was knowing how to move along the conversation. And one way to do that is by asking that company contact how they do work with universities. What is their preferred way to work with companies? Because maybe it isn't sponsored research, maybe it is an in-kind equipment donation, or maybe engaging with students in a capstone project or speaking, and just any way that you can open that door to a way that they're comfortable engaging with universities could build a long-term relationship. We had a lot of faculty talk about just being in the conversation, which kind of goes to what Colleen spoke to about not getting into the weeds with every single person that you talk to, but trying to touch a lot of people. And because it's about the connections down the road, they might think back to that conversation when they encounter a problem. And I think another key point that hasn't been touched on yet is that from several people in several groups talked about one thing that universities can offer most companies is their specific expertise, but also the wider breadth of expertise at the university. So a company might not have an ag production company, might not have an entomologist on staff who has that perspective. But if you can relay that value and get to that conversation, maybe by way of your friends in bio and ag engineering who are working with that company, then you can convey that value, and it starts to open the door to those valuable relationships to where you're solving a need. And we had faculty mention that I know my expertise and I know the expertise of the person next door and the building next door. So if a company asks me to help them with a problem and I know I can't do it, if I can find someone who can help them, then that has extreme value as well. Maybe I don't get the project and I'm not involved initially, but that starts to, that trusting relationship that's really important.
Very good. That was an excellent overview, and there were some great points that came out of this. I think that could be put together in a nice little white paper to share with faculty and students and that type of thing. There's a lot of good information here. So I'd like to just open this up. Are there comments or discussions from our industry guests on what they heard? Are you surprised at any of what you heard, or are there things that you want to expand on?
Yeah, a couple of things. One thing was just said, and I put it in the chat. Although a big company may have a lot of expertise, or it may have entomologists, whatever, but a small startup company probably doesn't. And I think Sean said, they're a small company and they don't have all the expertise, so they go out looking. And so that would all be maybe an opportunity that people don't think about. They may think about the big, the Bayers and the BASFs or the whatever, Kellogg's, but they may not think about a small company that is just starting out, maybe only has a few people, and they may need some specific expertise on a specific issue, and so that may be an opportunity that's maybe being missed. I don't know. It's an opportunity, I think, and I realize that because I was talking to some other small companies, as an upcoming retiree. Anyway, so the other thing was, I don't know what the other question was now.
Were there any surprises?
No, I mean, it was interesting to see the different different levels at which certain people are very engaged in industry and certain people are not, and it's more obvious in some areas than others. If it's weed science, it's pretty obvious you can work with the big the FMCs and the Bayers and the BASFs, or maybe not Bayer, but BASFs, etc. Whereas if you're doing some other things like library science, it's much more difficult to connect with industry. And so although the value is there, but you've got to express that value in some way that then is explain to people why you're valuable to have around is very important. And I think one of the things I can paste it again, there was a Emir Islamovich, who's one of our people who work with academia. He basically, and I'll repaste that for the ones that are not in the group. He had a very clear statement that he said I should definitely make, and there also his contact information there if anybody's interested. Know your purpose, do your homework, prepared to make a clear pitch. Be prepared. And you hear about that from the Boy Scouts. Well, be prepared is really important.
Very good.
And the other one we did, there was a link to a lady called Melissa Marshall, and I'll just repost that. Olivia actually she could find it as she has the expertise, She posted it, I'll repost it, which is Melissa Marshall, which is presenting your science. And it's really about making sure you don't get too far in the weeds, that you really apply it to where, to the level at which they're looking for. I'll shut up now. Thanks.
Don't need to shut up. So are there comments from others, from Arnaud or Sean on what you saw and heard?
Nothing to add. I do see a couple hands up, so I don't know if.
Okay, great. Colleen.
Maureen, if I could just add quickly, Katie's summary reminded me of a larger theme that came up a couple of times in our conversation, which fits in with this idea that it's not enough to know the journals. You also need to know your fellow faculty members, because Katie's absolutely right. One great way to build a relationship that could pay dividends in the long run is to refer an industry partner to someone else in your department or your field who can immediately meet their need. And I've seen that happen in my own partnerships with nonprofits. So I think that's a great thing to keep in mind, is we've got to build some collegiality to know what our colleagues are doing too.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Ajay, do you have something?
Well, if somebody can talk also about, we always, we keep telling people, and we encourage, and we also want to do ourselves. But when reaching the industry people, we really don't know what their focus is. There are lots of things on their table. There are a lot of possibilities they put their money on, but knowing what is the current need, what is the burning thing which they really want to invest money like this year or next 6 months. So it's one way is a long way, which is, having all the trust and getting into the inner circle. But when you're on the peripheral, how to get around and get that most important information, which probably can come if you quickly introduce, let them talk and absorb. But anybody else who wants to say anything more?
Great point.
Very good point. Anybody else? We've got quite a few on. I sat in on 3 separate sessions and kind of moved around a bit. And there's some quiet players out there, and that is not like faculty. So just so you know,
James got his hand up.
Where are we? Okay, good. Dr. Druya.
So, yeah, I would say one thing that I think we recognize as being super important when we engage industry partners. There's always a champion on the other end of that relationship. And we just need to take really good care of that person. They have a boss to answer to typically. And when I say that we need to take care of them, it mostly means that we need to be very communicative, so that they're up to date and this is especially true with small companies, but really any company where they're making monetary investments. They want to know that their investments are working for them, and knowing where the projects are, when they are, and so on. And just giving that person that is our champion the ability to respond in a very timely manner. It can be a 1-sentence response to their boss, but it gets them off the hook for the next 3 months, right? And so just us doing a good job of communicating the status, any issues that we might encounter in a project, successes that we have along the way, and keeping them fully appraised, I think is a really, really critical part of developing trust and the long-term working relationships.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with that. I mean, most of the things that you're going to have relationships with industry is not with industry, it's with somebody in industry who is able to get the funding for you. And if you don't deliver for them, it will go away because it will hurt their credibility internally. So you're not only maintaining your own credibility, or maintaining credibility of the person within the company that's supporting that, and making sure it's on the budget this year and next year.
Very good points.
One thing I can also add is, like, we sometimes there are lots of teams which go by the true language in this SOP or SOW. But if you continue to follow your heart in terms of delivering above and beyond and continue to stretch the limits of where this vision or the project is, I can tell you that just trust it. People know that they have funded you a 10th of a money or a 50th of money. They're going to compensate you. It'll continue to hang in their mind that, hey, we need to give him more funding. So don't stop yourself in terms of what you want to deliver individually.
Good. What else? What else? I just looking at some of the notes that I took listening to the facilitators, the idea of under promising and over delivering, and also working at the speed of industry. In my past life, we put together some projects where we did hire university people to do some of the work, and quite honestly, the timeline was a major challenge, and it was a major hurdle to get over. And I think that there's a lot of, misunderstanding may not be the right terminology, but understanding at what speed is expected when you are working with industry can, I think, be a little bit of a barrier.
And one thing that hasn't really been brought up, at least not in my group, is the kind of motivations between industry and academia. I mean, obviously with industry, it's about servicing our customers and creating products that have value. But that's not really how a lot of faculty or any faculty get rated, right? It's all about publication. So having, insight into what can be published versus not published is a really good upfront conversation to have as well.
Yeah, totally agree on that. I was mentioning that we are now more and more signing NDAs, and that's part of the normal job. But when we are doing that, we always take care that we have a possibility to communicate something, to publish something, in agreement together with the partner, of course. But we make it clear from the beginning that at a certain time we will need to publish and to show what we are doing. If it's not only for us, it's also for our bosses to show them that we are progressing. If we are not able to do that, and if we are partnership with someone from 1 year, 2 years, without providing any data, there is no chance we are going to start that again. So as I heard, it's very important for us making this contact to be able to make new contacts. And the best way for making new contact is that the one we have today are successful and bringing value to the company. So that's sometimes big part of the discussion.
Good. Any other comments? Any other thoughts on what you've heard today? I'm seeing a couple of people are having to drop off, and as I said, we were a little ahead of time as we came on, but I certainly don't want to cut the discussion short. There's been a lot of rich discussion here. I might pick on you, Samuel. You had talked, I think, in the last session that I sat in on about making sure that we were able to convey value. Do you have any further comments on that? I think probably in all of the discussion that I heard in this last few minutes, that kind of is at the core of it. If the industry doesn't understand the value of what you have to offer, it probably is not going to move forward.
Yes, I'm a communicator, so I pay special attention to how people convey what they are doing. And scientists are subject matter experts. They're really good in talking about in coded language about their work. And we have the School of Journalism and Mass Communication here, and our value proposition is we can connect the subject matter experts with the industry by translating what you're trying to convey. So if any of you wants to work with the School of Journalism, breaking your coded language and making it accessible, we are here in Nichols Hall. That's my value proposition. Come to the communicators, will help you communicate and make that industry proposition.
Yeah.
That sounds like an excellent idea.
Yes.
I love that coming out of both of you because as Colleen knows well, and a few of you, my whole focus in life in the last 5 years has been to try and pull interdisciplinary groups together. And that's one of the major issues is scientists speak in their own languages. And even from one scientist to another, if you're in a different field, you do not speak the same language. And it's very difficult sometimes to make sure that that's clear and understandable. So the communication side of it is just as important as the scientific side, I believe. So thank you, Ray, for chiming in on that one as well. It's a very important piece. Yes. Any other comments or questions? Again, I don't want to stop a good discussion here, which we've certainly got going.
Maureen, can I
Yes,
follow up
please.
on AJ's?
Please do, Paul.
Question? AJ had a good point. And that is a struggle of faculty is I don't know what industry needs. And so is, and I don't know, how our industry panelists feel that is the burden really on them to communicate that? How do we find that balance? That we can tell you what we're experts at, but what if it does not have application? Are you telling we need to go take it on ourselves to do our homework and maybe present? I mentioned to Arnaud maybe the concept of a quad chart where maybe we've done our research and we can hone that quad chart to maybe focus it on the particular industry partner potentially the problems they're trying to solve based on public literature. How do we find that balance when we can be more ready to serve your needs? Because that's what we're all about, to help solve problems. Right. Thank you.
I have a couple of things. One is I put a couple of links in the chat for the BASF pages where we explain some of this stuff. It reminds me, and we talked in our groups about going to conferences and talking to people and just sitting down with people you don't know. I had a baking problem at home that my jam tarts wouldn't stick together. And I was at the meeting, and Sean may laugh at this, but I was at the meeting and sitting at the table. And of course, cereals and grains meeting is a great place to put this kind of problem. So I said, why is this happening? And they said, well, you're using the wrong flour. I said, well, this worked in England, but I know the flour in the US is completely different. And so they pointed me to the right kind of flour, and boy, it worked. So you never know when you sat around a table, if you've got a problem, and just talking serendipity. And we had a case, I mean, in our group where talking to Kate, she says, I don't know who to contact. Said, well, here's the person at BASF, right, that could contact about this particular issue. I don't know if it'll be successful, but at least you made the contact. And so it's really just, it's really, sometimes these things come from casual conversations and from listening. And I said, and I think Samuel said about it, but you need to, and go back to Melissa Marshall as well, really to think about what is it that you are doing, and can you express how it may be of value in one page. It's I use one pages a lot, but succinctly, and then go listen to the people in your related industry and say, so what are you guys, what's your challenges? Or read the associated. Now I know all that takes time, and I know nobody has any time. Okay, that's but I probably have about 6 or 8 newsletters at least come over my emails, which I scan, and because I need to keep up on what's going on out there. But and it's all extra effort, I know. Just say, well, what's your problem? It's asking open-ended questions, and it is difficult. Yeah, it's not always easy to figure out what people want, but it's a long-term project. It's not something you can do in a week or a month. It may take years, but eventually you'll find somebody that's interested in what you're doing, probably.
Well, that comes back to also the networking that was alluded to earlier by some of the participants, in sitting down with people you don't know. Those names and those cards that you keep, I've got stacks of them from years in the past, and you will go back and look at those and you'll think, I had a discussion with somebody about that problem. And you go back through and look through either the cards or whatever it might be, but you can reach out to that person. They may not be the right person, but they can send you to somebody else that may be the right person. But it is that networking that makes all the difference.
I'll also add, if an industry person says, "Hey, I just started this with this company," they're like the right people to talk to, because they're also wanting to build their network of how they can enhance their know-how in their current new role. So I think if someone says, "I'm in a new role, a new position," try to do the one liner with that Ray put out. Like, what are your challenges? What are you trying to do? And because they're also trying to establish their own new network for their new job too. So just to mention that.
What else do we have? What else do we have? I think this has been a very rich discussion. As I said, the few notes that I've taken so far, I can see something of great value coming out of it that can be shared with other faculty and graduate students. And I believe I see there are several graduate students that jumped on board, and I'm hoping that gives them a little bit of background and information to be able to take with them when they go to industry meetings or trade association type situations where they can talk with other folks as well.
So if I was to ask people, how many people have gone through that process of looking at, and that was something I also talked about earlier, I think, what are the strengths and weaknesses of my department, group, or whatever you, and how does that relate to industry? How many people have actually done that? And I'm not going to challenge you to do that, but just think about that. Is that the next step after this workshop?
Question.
A challenge for everybody. I'm having fun because I'm retiring on Friday, so.
Well,
But then I've got to do the same thing, basically. What value do I bring?
well, I think like Paul was saying, it takes time. The biggest trouble, like there are lots of young faculty who are in our network. They continue to call, email, ask AJ, what can I do and how can I start and all that. And I can tell you, even if I don't want to connect, I give some of my connections very selectively. One, because they're my customers. This is my business. This is my business, right? But then I have to give a connection who I firmly believe that if I give Brian's name, Brian's going to do work better than I can do. And then probably he's in a space. But I think, Ray, I think this has to be a continuous process, because like I was saying, quickly identifying where the things are going. So I want to give that example again, that if we stop doing computer vision, AI, software development, hardware integration now today in bio and ag, I may have 10% of project which I currently have. So I have to continue to improvise and continue to add those skills which are relevant or needed. So machine system is a core thing, but nobody's developing like core planter by itself or a sprayer by itself. People are adding intelligence on it. People are adding smart systems on it. So if I have the core knowledge, but I'm missing what I can deliver as a new product. So if I don't have that, I will have no project. Yes, I know about sprayer, but I have nothing to add on it. So this improvisation, great point, I think, but I would say continue to evaluate what are the new skills we need to add, and be on the forefront. One of my other mentors also mentioned that, stay with your contact, because you always want to be on top of their list of, who they want to remember. So stay in touch and talk to them frequently.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor what's already been said, but just some simple words, because it really is about patience, persistence, but also mindset. And part of this is like at the end of the day, like there's a part of like, this is a process that you're going to value. These connections are things that you're going to value. And this is where I think it's been said a couple, maybe another one of the breakout sessions, but getting administrative support to do these things, having those conversations early, because it does require a significant amount of effort to cultivate these relationships that become really meaningful, to where your research program is not directed by it, but it is influenced, right? But you're allowing that because you see value in it. And so that doesn't just happen with 1 2-hour workshop session, but it might at least spark enough to be like, okay, how do I really develop a practice around this, knowing that it's how I approach a new conversation. I go to a meeting and a conference, but I'm now looking at that conference in a different light. I'm looking at these vendors and not saying, okay, they're trying to sell me something, but it's like, what is the value that what could I add to this new conversation? That's just, I guess you just got to keep at it, because it keeps, I said before, like 4% funding rate, we're still pretty persistent when it comes to it, because it's something we value, but we're also getting evaluated for those activities. So again, making sure that your admins are supporting it. I think K-State is really in a good position with the economic prosperity plan to push these kinds of ideas forward and make that more, I don't know, more center stage in our conversations. Not because that's going to change who we are, but again, it goes back to, we have some alignments, and I think that's at the end of the day what we're trying to figure out. At least I am, with these kinds of conversations.
Colleen added, well said, Brian. Absolutely true. It's I'm glad that you brought up the initiative that we've got at K-State here now, because a lot of where we are headed with that is towards building businesses in the state of Kansas and trying to see growth within the state and that type of thing. And the only way that's going to happen is to understand how business operates and where the intersection of the faculty and the research and the business community falls. So it's a very, very important point. Let's get quiet out there. Well, I don't want to just carry this on for the sake of carrying it on, but I will I guess end the session with thanking the industry participants so much for your time. This has been really great. The discussion has been wonderful. And you brought a perspective, I'm hoping, to the faculty and the students that are on board here, on board here, to that things that they may not have thought about, that they will think about next time they go to one of those trade show meetings, or the next time they go to a technical conference, or even just when they have to reach out next. Colleen, did you have your hand up? Somebody? Nope. Somebody I thought did. But we will have, this has been recorded. We will have this put out onto our website, so that those that, if you want to go back and listen to any portion of it, you're certainly welcome to. And I think some of the notes I took are very, very helpful, and hopefully we'll get some of that more information out to others on campus that would be interested in knowing it. So
thank you. This was fun.
Great. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. And thanks, industry folks. Much appreciating your time.
And to the facilitators for facilitating well. This was great.